our mission at ACUE to ensure student success working with institutions through quality instruction. Thanks so much for the introduction. I do want to thank Jesse Walker and Terrence Youngblood for assisting me and my colleague Pete, who I hope is online right now, in being here to present this webinar. Pete, are you here? Okay, so Pete isn't quite here yet. Luckily, the beginning of the webinar is me. So I'm going to jump in, and I'm sure Pete will be joining us. I wanted to set the context and share a little bit of how and why ACUE exists. So as we started to look at the student success agenda or the strategies that institutions across the country were putting into place, as we became more and more held accountable for persistence, student retention, student graduation rates, we started to notice that the strategies being put in place made sense. They were good strategies for some of the needs that need to be met, but in our estimation, there was a major element missing, a foundational element, we would argue, and that was the quality of instruction in our classrooms. And for us, leaving out the quality of instruction in our classrooms, as well as faculty sometimes, from our conversations about student success seemed risky at best. I'll give you an example. Guided pathways makes perfect sense. Let's make sure every student has a clear pathway to a meaningful degree. For us, we feel like, wouldn't we want to, at the same time, make sure that every course along that pathway was taught using the evidence-based practices, teaching practices, that we know increase student engagement and learning. As I said, faculty sometimes haven't been fully brought into the student success strategies. And as we think about faculty and their role in our institutions, we know a few things. One, faculty, more than most, and maybe for some of us more than any other staff person on campus, interact with the largest number of students every year. And faculty spend the most time with students. In fact, if we were to compare faculty time to, let's say, an advisor, faculty in a given semester will spend 200 hours with a student compared to 1 hour with an advisor. In addition, something I wanted to share today are the results of a survey done by the Gallup-Purdue Index in 2014. They asked an interesting question, I think an interesting question for any of us, and that was, what if are there any college attributes that lead to graduates who are fully engaged in their work and thriving in their well-being? And they did a good job of explaining what that meant. And I would recommend anyone to read this article. But in the end, their question is, what if any attributes matter? And what they found, interestingly enough, was it simply does not matter where a student goes to college. The correlates to being a graduate who is engaged in their work and thriving in their well-being have everything to do with the experiences a college student has on the campus that or in the online environment with faculty. So these are the 7 experiences that correlate to successful graduates. That one faculty member cares about them as a person, one faculty member encourages them to follow their dreams, one faculty member excites them about learning, they have available to them a semester-long project where they apply the things they're learning in the classroom, the same in an internship or job situation, and then that they're academically challenged. And isn't that an interesting one? And that one actually came in the 2017 work that they did. But students who are successful didn't go through their college experience easily. They were challenged and they needed to rise up to meet those challenges. And so what those data showed was that students who had those experiences were nearly 2 times more likely to be engaged in their work and to lead fulfilling lives. And so it's no surprise as well that for any of those graduates who say they had a mentor in their during their college experiences, 80% named that mentor as an instructor, a faculty member, who made a difference for them in their lives. And so for us, recognizing those 2 things, that the quality of instruction is foundational to our work and faculty are necessary. If we really want to improve retention, graduation, persistence, we must involve faculty. And for us, we must pay attention to the quality of instruction. In addition, what we know to be true is faculty, instructors in higher education are experts in their discipline. They are experts in the research processes, but most of them have had little, sometimes no preparation to teach using those evidence-based practices that we've shown increase student engagement and learning. So our response at ACUE was to build courses in those effective teaching practices and to offer certificates in effective college instruction for faculty members who finished those courses. And finally, to make available to faculty a community of professional practice so they could continue learning, continue growing in their teaching practices. We had a goal that those courses would be comprehensive, that we wouldn't be simply offering faculty a tip here and there, a single practice, a grouping of practices. We wanted to offer faculty a foundational course in the core set of knowledge and skills you need to be effective in the college classroom. And so one of our first tasks actually was to identify that core set of knowledge and skills. It wasn't out there already published. And so we worked with teaching and learning experts across the country to identify that core set of knowledge and skills. And what you see here is the result of that work. This is our framework of effective teaching. I'm going to go quickly through it because we only have so much time today, but always happy to talk more about it. And by the way, I failed to say, interrupt me anytime. If you have questions or what have you, I'd be happy to address those as I'm sharing the presentation. Anyway, our framework, I think, makes sense to most of us. Our first unit on designing an effective course includes how do you write good student-centered learning outcomes, align your assessments, align your activities, create an effective syllabus. The second unit, how do you establish that really productive learning environment, connecting with students, motivating students, engaging underprepared students, embracing the diversity in our 21st century classroom, promoting a civil learning environment where we can have some of those discussions that could be a little bit challenging that we need to have in the college environment. Our third unit on active learning, what we wanted to make sure of, because we know students have to be actively involved in their learning if they're actually going to apply that learning to new situations. So what we made sure of in this unit is whether or not a faculty member is teaching a large class, a small class, utilizing a lecture format or a discussion format, they would have active learning practices they could put in place to make sure students were actively involved. Fourth unit on promoting higher order thinking. We know that faculty, and interestingly enough, employers want students who can critically think, who can solve complex problems, who can engage in quality written and oral communication. And so what we made sure of here is that we were offering faculty the practices they need to help students analyze, evaluate, create. As a matter of fact, the last module on developing self-directed learners is focused on helping faculty help students start to be good learners, because we know they're going to need to learn for a lifetime. So they start to understand how they specifically learn best. And then finally, a unit on assessment. so much so that faculty learn more than how to create really good quality grading systems that are consistent, transparent, and fair, but also learn how to utilize student data to inform their own instruction, and then how to offer the kind of feedback that really helps students improve their performance. And so all of our courses, and our current catalog you can see here includes 3 courses. All of our courses are aligned to this framework that includes or identifies the core set of knowledge and skills. And every single one of those bulleted items is a module. And the module is about an hour long. Faculty engage in the module. They choose one of the practices in each module, they implement it and reflect on that implementation. And I'll talk more deeply about that as I get into actually showing you the course. But our current catalog includes a course on effective teaching practices that is a little more focused on face-to-face and hybrid instruction, and then a course on the essentials of online instruction, and finally a course that focuses on career guidance and readiness. I'm going to stop for a minute, take a little break. And so what I've talked about thus far is the framework, and that's the identifying of the core set of knowledge and skills. Now I want to talk about the design of the course itself. What does a module look like, and why does it look that way? So when we were designing the course, we wanted to make sure that the components of our online course were aligned to how people learn, specifically how adults learn, and best online practices. But I have to say that an equal input was given by faculty focus groups that we met with across the country. And I would ask those faculty focus groups, what would it take for you to be inspired enough to change what your practices are in the classroom? Because that's the reality here. We have a foundational course, it's aligned to the knowledge, the core set of knowledge and skills. Experts in teaching and learning have endorsed that framework. ACE endorsed that framework and brought additional experts to bear to endorse it. But now the second piece of the puzzle here is, how are we going to create a course where faculty feel inspired to change what they do in the classroom? And that's a big deal. And so as I talked to faculty across the country, they were very, very clear about what they needed. They wanted to, 1, see effective practices happening in an authentic classroom. They wanted to, 2, hear from the faculty about why they were using those practices in their classroom or online course. They wanted to hear from the researchers who did the research to demonstrate that those practices that we recommend increase student engagement and increase student learning. And finally, they wanted opportunities to collaborate, to be able to learn with and from their colleagues. And so if you look here at our design, you can see that we followed exactly what faculty asked for. So our courses are video rich. They include, the 27 modules include 180 demonstration lessons. In other words, 180 pieces of film where faculty are implementing those evidence-based practices that we're recommending in the module. We feature over 25 teaching and learning experts. They wanted to hear from the researchers. We made sure we delivered on that. The course is collaborative. So this is an online course. And we really had 2 goals here. 1, we wanted the course to be scalable. We wanted faculty to be able to do parts of the course asynchronously when it was best for them, when they had the time to engage. But we also wanted them to have opportunities to engage in a cohort with their colleagues. And so faculty do take the course in a cohort, and there is a component of each module where they do engage in conversations together, actually twice in every module. The course is facilitated by an expert in faculty development. We really enjoy working with teaching center folks at the institution so that together we're implementing the course with cohorts of faculty. As I shared a minute ago, and this is key, implementation and reflection is required. In order to complete a single module, faculty need to choose from between 5 to 9 practices. So we don't have modules where we say, do this one thing. Because if we did, and these are adults, they would argue with us about why we were telling them to do this one thing with their particular students and what have you. So instead, we offer a good choice of practices. They implement one of those practices and then reflect on that experience in writing. And I'll show you the rubric we use for reflection. But the course includes 25 modules to build to that certificate. Now, I started this presentation talking with you about how our mission is to ensure student success through quality instruction. And so I don't want to shy away from that. So I want to kind of address how we do that. I am very proud of the quality of our course. I am very proud that we actually work with institutions to implement that course. So this is not a situation where you purchase some licenses and we say, good luck, I hope it goes well. Instead, we assist and support you in implementation, and together with our partners, we measure efficacy, the impact of our course on faculty and students. This construction that you see here is the construct we use to evaluate whether or not a course is resulting in the student impacts that we're looking for. Now, it's going to make sense to you, make sense to us, that you can't actually look at student impact until you see first whether or not, you can see level 1, faculty were engaged by the course. Level 2, faculty learned during the course. And level 3, most important, faculty changed their practices in their classroom and online courses. Once you show those data, you can start to look at level 5, level 4, student engagement. And we do that through a variety of surveys, sometimes the institution surveys, sometimes our survey, depending on what the institution would like. And then level 5, student outcomes. So we do look at grades, we do look at course completion rates, DFWs, et cetera. And then once an institution has implemented across enough faculty, we can start to look at institutional outcomes. And I want to share with you what we see nationally. And the data that you see up here is from over 50,000 respondents. So nationwide, we ask faculty if they find the course relevant. 97% have found the course relevant. 88% would recommend the course to a colleague. That's one of my favorite measures. You know, would you recommend this course to your colleagues? So nationally, we say 88%, and then 94% report that the course helped refine their teaching. Now you remember level 2 is around learning. So those first 3 questions for us are about faculty engagement. And so what we see nationwide is high levels of faculty engagement. We also see high levels of learning as reported by faculty engaging in the course. So as faculty engage with 25 modules, they learn 58 new practices and they learn more about 75 practices. You can see below on the PowerPoint here that that's an average, learning an average of about 2.3 practices per module, and then learning more about 3 practices per module. And here's our key data, right? Implementation, changing what you do in the classroom. And again, this is national. While they engage with 25 practices, we have data showing that they implement 55, and we do ask them, they plan to implement an additional 55. So on average, faculty are reporting to us that they implement 2.2 practices per module, and they plan to implement another 2 later on. So you can only, usually faculty engage in 1 module a week. They're able to implement 1 or 2 practices a week, but they do report on our survey that, you know, over time they'd like to go back and try some additional practices. Now, interesting enough, we are pretty excited about a partnership we have with some folks that you might know and with some folks who might be on the webinar right now, and that is UA Pulaski Tech College. These are their data. They have 2 cohorts. 1 cohort that has completed, 1 cohort that's in process, I think very near completion, but you can see their data is very close to the national data. 93% of UA-PTC course takers found content relevant, 86% would recommend to a colleague, and 100% would have reported that it helped them refine their teaching practices. If you look at learning, you see that they learned 60 practices, learned more about 90, and our implementation numbers are key. So the UA-Pulaski Technical College folks, just like our national average, show they're implementing about 2 practices per module, would like to implement 2 more down the road. Now, that data is pretty exciting. To have faculty that positive about engaging in a course is, what I consider a very good day. Equally good is the student impact data we have as a result of this work across many of the institutions with whom we partner. I'm gonna list a couple of examples. At Texas Women's University, we saw a gap that existed between African American students and the other students at Texas Women's. We saw that gap closed between the time, comparing faculty prior to taking the course to after they take the course. The course completion rates gap for that closed. At Miami-Dade College, where we've implemented quite a number of cohorts, we've seen grades improve and we've seen student engagement improve. By the way, all of these data that I'm talking about right now have been shown to be statistically significant. So the increase in grades, statistically significant. The increase in engagement, statistically significant. At City College in San Francisco, we saw, again, an increase in grades. At Delta State University in Mississippi, we saw not only an increase in grades, we saw a decrease in DFWs. At Broward College, where we actually gave students a survey that asked them about the teaching practices they were engaged in, they were able to report that they were regularly engaged in all of the evidence-based teaching practices across the course. And sometimes folks will ask us, well, we know faculty are reporting, self-reporting their learning. We know faculty are self-reporting that they're implementing, but how do you really know? Well, I think if you get a group of students answering questions, not about the popularity of faculty, but rather about the practices that they're engaged with in the classroom, I think that's some very, very hefty data. We also have, and I showed you the national data on faculty believing the course is relevant and then believing that the course is improving their teaching. So I'm gonna stop there. And what I'd like to do is to show you some of the course, but let me stop and see if there's any questions that folks have, because you might be tired of listening to me talk right now. So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them. If not, I'm gonna jump into the course so you can actually see what it's like versus hearing me talk about it. So I'm being a good instructor. I'm gonna give some wait time. I want to make sure, can everyone see the dashboard that I just put up? Great. There's one person that I can, well, no, I can, oh, thank you for the head nods. Really, really helpful to somebody on the webinar. Okay, so I'm gonna dive into the course. Let's see here. And actually what's kind of cool about this course experience is you're seeing the course exactly as our course takers do. So our course is in Canvas, and the dashboard that you saw is the dashboard that one of our course takers would have. They'd have just one square. I just have a couple for demonstration purposes, but they've got the framework here, and as they progress through different modules, this little circle increases. And they would click on their square and up would come this home page, which would include the modules that they would have available to them. Something that's kind of interesting is, even though here you're seeing the modules listed as they are in the framework, for each of our cohorts, we actually work with you to sequence the modules and determine the cadence that would best meet your cohort. So No one goes through the course 1A, 1B, 1C, or as the framework defines it, but rather with a sequence that makes most sense for the timing of the cohort and the needs of the cohort. I am going to jump into this module on engaging underprepared students. So faculty would click here. I'm going to do a really quick course experience, but I can tell you if indeed after this webinar you're interested in learning more, we would do a more thorough course experience because we think it's so important for anybody that we partner with to really have a sense of what it feels like to engage in the course. What you see here though, starting with this introduction and going through this closing summary, are the components that are included in every single one of the modules that are listed, bulleted in our framework. We start with an introduction, which I'm not going to play today because I want to play some of the class demo for you. Our introduction, kind of like 60 minutes, pulls some really interesting clips from the class demonstration. You'll remember that faculty said we want to see authentic practices being used in a classroom. So I'm going to play the class demo for you, but we start with an introduction. Faculty click next. Up comes a rationale. We connect the topic to the research. So right away, faculty understand that all of what we're going to be recommending is research-based. We outline the learning objectives. They're bolded here. And then underneath each learning objective are the practices that we're going to display in the course in this particular module. So for example, identifying students' readiness for learning, we've got 3 practices that faculty can implement. Implementing practices that support student success. And we've got a number of practices that faculty could choose from. Implementing grading practices that really help with student success. And then finally, offering students some additional support. Remember, this is the module on engaging underprepared students. So what we wanted to do was to make sure faculty knew when and if a student is truly underprepared, there are a number of practices that you can put in place that really can assist in helping that student be successful. So faculty would click next. And up comes an opening questionnaire. This is a set of survey questions that are designed to get faculty thinking about the topic and helping them to remember some of what they've learned about the topic already, because we know if faculty are reminded of some of what they already know in this topic area, as we go into the part of the module where they're going to be learning more, they can make those connections. So faculty would click next, and up comes the classroom demonstration. Remember, faculty said we want to see the practices being put in place in authentic classrooms. So I'm going to play, and they wanted to hear from faculty. So I'm going to play not the full class demo, but a good portion of it so you can get a sense of what that looks like, how we delivered on that ask by faculty.
It's a huge transition from high school to college. And so you do feel like, okay, well, this isn't so easy. I'm not just the smartest one in top of my class anymore.
I definitely wasn't as fully prepared in terms of how much reading I was going to be doing and extra work to be putting into class. I had to get a lot of help on my first few papers because the expectations were so different from high school.
Students really vary in their preparedness for college level work. We really have to meet people where they are.
I would like to start class by giving you a readiness assessment on trigonometry. Readiness evaluations are very important so that you actually know where your students are and that you can fill gaps if you need to, or you can move ahead if you need to. I just want to let you all know that this is an ungraded activity. I think that when you're giving a readiness test, it's real important that you let students know that it's ungraded so that they will do their best, but they won't have the anxiety that you're dropping something on them that they haven't had an opportunity to prepare for.
It kind of freaked me out because I don't know this material, but by him giving us that test, it told me what I needed to learn, like what I didn't understand.
We'll be starting a unit on trigonometry tomorrow, And so I'm going to take these results that I have here, and I'm going to use that to help tailor make what we'll be doing in the future on this topic.
Rather than writing an analysis of the Inferno, this assignment asks you to write poetry, to write a section of Dante's Inferno. One of the most common questions or roadblocks for students is, what does the teacher really want? What am I really supposed to be doing here? And therefore, I find it really valuable to tell them exactly, here's what I'm really looking for. Here's what I really want. When I read these, here's what I'm going to be looking for. Do you seem to comprehend, understand Dante's style and logic? Do you understand the character? Who is that character, and how have they sinned, and how is their sin going to bring on its own form of punishment?
The assignment that you will be doing will be looking at how various organelles function and what happens when they actually malfunction. Now, if you take out your syllabus and we look at the learning outcomes, then we're looking at learning goal number 2. We're going to summarize and construct the basic structures and functions of cells by explaining how internal membranes and organelles contribute to the cell's function, by showing them this is what you're going to actually gain from doing this assignment. They're seeing that they're not just doing something because it's busy work. They're doing something because it's going to help them learn and make connections throughout the semester.
We have an exam coming up on Monday. Let's do a typical test question, which gives you a sense of, do I know this? Can I apply this information? If the end goal is to have this assessment where I want to see them be able to do this, you really have to work backwards from there and think about all the ways that you're going to prepare them to be able to do that. All right, so here was this question relating to diabetes. Can somebody share out with me what you noticed right away about mouse 1, 10 minutes after eating, 20 minutes after eating, and then after given an insulin injection? What do you notice that's different about mouse 1, 2, and 3?
Mouse 1 appears to have type 2 diabetes because even after it received the insulin injection, its glucose level didn't decrease by much.
Okay, so that's going to set us up for doing another question like this. You're not going to find it as challenging now that you've practiced a question like this.
We'll be lecturing and she'll say, okay, I'm going to give you a typical test question and you're going to answer it and we're going to discuss it and see if you understand what it's about. If everyone's understanding it, we'll move on, or if not, she'll break it down more in detail and talk about that concept again.
It takes students a little while in college to determine if they feel prepared or not, and often they need an assessment to do that. So I use a quiz within the first 2 weeks, a second quiz before the first exam, and the first exam. These are all very early assessments in the semester, and I'm using them as much to figure out which students are where, as much as they are using that data to figure out what they know and what they don't know.
So I'm hoping that that excerpt gave you a good idea of how we filmed faculty using these practices and allowing the faculty focus groups who said, we want to hear from the faculty, hearing from them about why, and the icing on the cake, hearing from students about how these practices have been helpful to them. Now in the module, faculty, when they complete the classroom demo, and what we make sure of with every classroom demo is that every practice we recommended back in the set of learning objectives, they see in this class demo. In addition, faculty said to us, we want to hear from the experts who have demonstrated that these things work. So in this case, you'll hear from Jose Bowen and Sandra McGuire, both experts in the area of engaging and really helping students who are unprepared be successful. I'm going to play again an excerpt of this, but to give you a good idea of how this works.
Now in America, we want to have more students actually complete college. But that doesn't mean rethinking the system, because it isn't just all of a sudden everybody got smarter and that the population shifted and now we have 50% instead of 20% of people are able to do this work. So if we want people to be able to do these jobs and have these skills, we're probably going to have to rethink how we teach, what we teach, why we teach. All of those things are going to change. That's the world around us and the economy, our students. So even if our fields have not changed, they have all changed. But even if they hadn't changed and our teaching methods haven't changed, our our students, our world, the economy, the reasons people go to college, all of that has changed. And so I think it's reasonable to say, how do I respond to that?
There's no denying that students start college with different levels of preparation. Some are more than ready for college work. Many have about the right level of preparation, while others are truly underprepared. This is your student's preparation curve. How will you draw their performance curve? Will the two lines overlap? Underprepared students remaining the low achievers? Although some deficits are harder to address, there are steps you can take to shift the curve so that by semester's end, all of your students perform better than where they started, and to shrink the curve so that underprepared students narrow the gap with their peers.
I have had faculty tell me that, well, these are adults. They should know that they need to buy the book and read the book. They should know what they need to do. This is their choice. And I say that we could take that attitude, but because of students' prior environment, their prior exposure to strategies that are not what we want them to do, and it really isn't their fault, and it's really not their choice. If you've only been exposed to one set of behaviors, when you get in another environment and you don't even know that there are other behaviors that you could do, it's not really your choice. You're doing the only thing you know to do. And so I think that it's incumbent upon us as faculty to present this information so that students do have choices. After they get the information, if they decide, no, I don't want to come to class, no, I don't want to buy the book, after we've given them all of the evidence, led them through discussions, not just by telling them this is what you need to do, but leading them through discussion questions and activities that demonstrate why these things are important, then I think we can say it's their choice. But until we do that, it really isn't their choice.
Again, it's helpful to speak.
So again, just wanted you to get a good sense of how we present the experts who've done some of the research. Let's see here. Faculty would click on next. And up comes the instructor resources. So you'll remember that I said we want faculty to implement one of the practices. So what we make sure of is that we offer all of the resources. In this case, there's quite a number of classroom practices and grading practices that are listed. And so we make sure faculty can click here and get that nice list of the grading practices that we just shared in the module. After the instructor resources, and actually, let's see, it didn't go, okay. I meant to point out that we also offer online resources for the same learning objectives. If you happen to be teaching an online course or a hybrid course, we've got a number of resources to allow you to do the same practices, but do them well in an online environment. Faculty would click next, and up comes a set of module components where we're hoping faculty can think more deeply about the topic area. In this case, we're listing some of the common misconceptions, some of the common challenges in this particular topic area. For example, misconception 3 here. Implementing strategies to support students will negatively impact well-prepared students. There's actually a great deal of data on that. And so that's what we do. We quote from the data that says, actually, when you implement evidence-based teaching practices, all students benefit, in particular, those students who might struggle the most. And so faculty gain some of that research information by reading through these misconceptions and challenges. Now, up to this point, faculty could engage in the module asynchronously when it's best for them. Each cohort will agree when they're going to do the observe and analyze a particular day. So you don't have to be present at a particular time, but if a cohort is engaging with a single module a week, they might agree on Wednesdays, we'll do the observe and analyze. Now, you remember that faculty thus far have seen expert instruction, effective instruction, they've heard from the experts, we wanted to offer them some rich way to have conversation about the practices. And what we decided to do was to film what we call developing practice. So this is a scripted video, but here we've got a faculty member who is acting like they're trying some of these practices for the first time. And so they're doing some things well, and some areas could be tweaked or adjusted. And that's the conversation that the cohort engages in. What, in this case, does Jennifer do well? What, in this case, might you say to Jennifer she might want to adjust or tweak or add? I want to play just a little bit of this so you get a sense of how rich that conversation is.
I've just handed back the paper that you guys submitted last class, and I'd like you to take a moment to review the grade and the feedback I've given you. One of the reasons I like to make sure that you have something graded after only a couple weeks is so you get an idea of how you're doing. Things like, are your study habits working? Are you getting enough out of the class? And are you taking good notes? It's basically a checkpoint before we get too far into the semester. Are there any general questions about the assignment or the grading? Yeah.
Can we use your feedback to make changes and then hand it back in?
That's a good question. The grading policy is spelled out in the syllabus, and I don't accept revised papers. Instead, I want you to use the feedback to improve your next paper.
Okay.
Yella?
Is there anything we can do to improve this grade? I know this is a really big percent of our overall grade, and I know you don't drop any grades.
If you mean along the lines of extra credit, no, I don't offer extra credit, but look at the feedback, like I said, and hopefully it'll help you improve the next time. This paper is worth just as much as the other two, so you can always do better next time. Also, I want to remind you about a great resource that we have on campus in the Writing Center. Basically, it's like tutoring for your writing. I strongly encourage you to go there if you've earned a grade that you're not so happy with. They can teach you how to improve for your next paper. A lot of you won't need this assistance, but some of you, I strongly encourage it.
Can I ask, like, what do they do there? Do we just walk in, or?
You won't really need an appointment. I don't quite know all the specifics, but if you go and you just bring your paper, it's basically like tutoring. It's a great resource, so you should try it out.
I'm going to stop there. I think we have too many people on the webinar to actually engage in a conversation, but if, again, you're interested in learning more at your institution, we would have the group engage in the conversation, because then you get a good sense of the quality of that conversation about the things that Jennifer did well, perhaps the offering of some early assessments, but also things that she might adjust. I mean, might she make sure that first assessment isn't weighted the same as the next few assignments, taking into consideration that a student's learning curve early on is steeper than later on, et cetera. So again, faculty have good quality conversation. They get to this part of the module called Practice and Reflect. And this is the point where faculty will choose which practice they want to implement in their classroom or online course. We make sure we link right to the instructor resources for each of the practices that have instructor resources. And faculty are asked to implement and then reflect in writing on the experience. And it's that written reflection that is scored. And if the score meets this MEET criteria that you see in the rubric here, then they get a badge for the module, 25 badges. They get the certificate in effective instruction that is co-endorsed by the American Council on Education. So it is a nationally recognized certificate. And you can see here in the rubric that what we're asking faculty to do is to identify which practice they put in place, why they chose that one, what successes and challenges they encountered, how student engagement or learning was impacted, and then finally what their plans are to continue to refine that practice, recognizing that this was likely the first time that they tried the practice. So we're not looking for perfection. What we're looking for, though, is high quality reflection. And by the way, reflection and high quality reflection is the one strategy that has been demonstrated in faculty development circles to actually help people improve their teaching skills. Faculty click next. engage in a summary discussion with their colleagues. We have a prompt here, but the facilitator can put their own prompt in, make sure that it's related to the reflections that he or she read, and allow faculty to share some of the successes and challenges. What we do with the summary discussions now is we have faculty engage in a block of modules and then have a full-fledged summary discussion at the end of the block. This is the area where faculty would take the survey. This is how we collect the data on whether or not they think the module was relevant, what they learned, and what they implemented. And then finally, there's a closing summary. Again, we're short on time, so I'm going to skip the closing summary. I'm going to actually go back into the course, all the way back to my mini course experience here, my dashboard. What I'd like to show you today, and I think we have enough time to do one, and then we'll get back to the PowerPoint. I'd like to show you at least the introduction for one of the career modules. Reason being, let me get there. Reason being that when we worked on the career course, which includes facilitation of 23 of the modules listed in the framework, plus these two, we wanted to make sure that we were never asking faculty to become career service experts, but rather helping faculty understand how they can engage in the kinds of conversations that can be helpful for students as they think about their future. So I'm going to click into one of these modules. This is on embedding career guidance in your course. I'm just going to play the introduction again to give you a good sense of how this course works.
Welcome to the AQ module on embedding career guidance into your course. In this module, we'll discuss how to effectively respond to students' inquiries about choosing a major, finding an internship, and considering career options.
I think professors can advise students best because we have more of those touch points with our students, whether that's in the classroom, informal hallway conversations, through advising appointments. We have the opportunity to have a lot of those meaningful conversations about a student's interests and experience and passions. Share with me some of the things that you enjoy doing in your downtime.
I did a lot of volunteer work in high school, and I really enjoyed that.
Create opportunities for students to engage with alumni and volunteers to understand the relevance of coursework to their future goals.
The more we can get our students to interact with the upper level students and with the alumni, it just gives them more of a background, because so many of them come in thinking, I want to do something with math. It's like, well, let's tell you about all the opportunities in math, and then let us connect you with some people who've done exactly what you're doing now.
So what did you do for your internship?
I did an occupational health internship, and I did it at an extended care facility.
I did my internship at a company called Serenity Counseling. It's a mental health counseling agency.
They're listening very closely. They're almost like leaning in to get that experience and those insights from the alumni. It's incredibly important to have those kinds of connections.
And to connect coursework to students' goals and skills development.
You need to be able to effectively communicate to future employers what skills you've developed and how you develop them. The research suggests that faculty play a very important role in helping them realize what skills they develop in the major that will be useful in the world of work.
We make those connections for them in terms of how the content that they encounter in the class or the skills that they're developing in a particular class are able to contribute to their career readiness and to their professional development.
So again, I just played the intro to give you a rough idea of the career course, and if indeed you wanted to learn more, we could do that with you. Just want to go back into our PowerPoint. Pete, are you on now? Okay. I will do Pete's part.
Bridget, I don't see him logged in, by the way.
Okay. So one of the things that we did to help with this webinar was actually reach out to Chancellor Ellerby at UA Pulaski Tech. And she actually was willing to get on the webinar with us, even though she is at a family reunion. We said, no need. If you could write up a few words, we'd love to share those with you. And so that's what I'm gonna do is to share what Dr. Ellerby wrote. I think we might have some UA Pulaski Tech folks on the webinar. Happy to have you chime in if you're familiar with the course as well. But let me share what she wrote. She said, UA-PTC chose to implement AQ for several cogent reasons. One, to engage and energize faculty in a nationally recognized PD program endorsed by the American Council on Education. So you can see the certificate here is the certificate faculty receive when they complete the course, and you can see it's got that American Council on Education endorsement. For them to endorse the course and the framework, they actually did their own review with their own experts in order to say, okay, yes, we will endorse both of those things. Dr. Ellerby says as well, the research-based content with direct institutional support and access to a national network of practitioners really allowed faculty to develop their teaching practice further. The comprehensive teaching competencies and strategies she believes are absolutely foundational to academic student success. And that success for both faculty and students supports that success, that teaching success for both faculty and students supports UA-PTC's mission of advancing educational quality, retention, course success, completion, and graduation. And I love that she says for both faculty and students, because sometimes folks forget when things are going better in a classroom, when students are more engaged, when students are asking better and more interesting questions, faculty are happier too. And she writes, as a result of AQ's implementation, our completing faculty are nationally credentialed and also receive a stipend for their participation in the program. When we asked her to share her thoughts about the educational outcomes she's expecting, she writes, our college has had 55 faculty participate with another 26 enrolled for the fall 2019. College faculty are finding the evidence-based teaching competencies challenging, yet positively impacting their students. The qualitative feedback highlights from faculty include believing students to be more engaged with their curriculum and instruction. The college is collecting quantitative data on their first cohort this summer. And she hopes to see course success rates higher in those related courses. She indicates AQ is an outstanding program. It's challenging, yet rewarding to our participating faculty. And the AQ support given to UA-PTC has been excellent. She offers to folks on the webinar, please feel free to give me a call if you have additional questions. She appreciates that we took some time to share her thoughts. So please do reach out to her if you have some questions. We're particularly excited about the fact that she recognizes the implementation support is of quality and helpful, and she, with us, are looking at the efficacy data currently. Just to give you a sense of the implementation support. So like I said earlier on, we don't simply have you obtain a group of licenses. We work with you to ensure that implementation is going to be of high quality. So for every partnership, the institution will have an AQ academic lead. That person will work with the campus lead to collaboratively design the program, the sequencing of the modules, the cadence. They will onboard the course facilitator. We can facilitate it as well, but we like if the facilitator is part of the campus so it feels very campus-based. The academic lead will help with course taker recruitment and the launch of the course. We do a face-to-face launch. We know success breeds success, so we really take faculty through the first module so they're very clear on the expectations. And then we offer ongoing course support. And that is in the form of weekly check-ins to make sure things are going well, answer any questions, etc. We also enroll the faculty course takers into the online course. You recall that faculty complete a module by completing a written reflection. We score those reflections. We want the facilitators to really be coaches. And so we do the scoring. That ensures that the scoring is both accurate and reliable across the country. And then we issue badges for each of the modules. And then finally the credential. And then we have a pinning ceremony at the end of the course so folks can really celebrate their accomplishment. They have engaged with 25 modules. And as Dr. Ellaby said a couple of times there, it's not easy. And so when faculty complete, they really want to celebrate and be recognized. And then as I shared, we measure the impact and financial return with you. And faculty, as they're engaging in the course, are also engaged in our ACUE community of professional practice so that they continue to have support once they've completed the course. Let me get here. The way that we form partnerships is we'll work with you. If you're interested, please do feel free to contact myself or Pete, where I believe you'll get the webinar PowerPoint and our contact information is there. But what we'll want to do with you is to expand the conversation and make sure you have a real course experience. So that takes a little bit longer, about a 90-minute meeting, but it'll give the participants in a meeting a real sense of what it's like to engage in the course. And then our partnership directors will have some conversations with you about, how would you like this work to advance your student success work? How would you want to track the outcomes? What faculty would you want to engage in the course early on and then later on, et cetera? So we just wanted to kind of share this with you so you had a general sense. But my hope is that the webinar itself got you interested and maybe wanting to learn more, maybe reaching out to Dr. Ellaby and then reaching out to us. We'd be happy to chat with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the, gosh, I think I only have 2 minutes, so I probably can't answer any questions. But if you send them to me on email, I will definitely get back to you today. So appreciate everyone being here today. So thank you.
So Penny, quick question. So would the faculty contact you, or the CAO should be the one to start the discussion?
Anybody that wants to reach out that's interested should reach out, and then we will take it from there. We welcome all interested parties. Now, you had said that you wanted to do a poll or something, so I figured I better end now. Does that make sense?
You will see a poll on your screen. If you wouldn't mind clicking and letting us know how the webinar went for you. It only takes a minute.